So speaking of challenges, right? One of my favorite challenges now that we get to talk about, even though it would never rise to the level of a misogi, but as a daily practice, is rucking. So why is it that people like you and I have taken to this thing? And maybe we could start by just kind of defining what is rucking.
Rucking is carrying weight for the sake of weight in a backpack. So the word grew out of military circles. So in the military, rucking is just a standard fitness practice. It is the main fitness tool that the U.S. military and militaries all around the world, going back hundreds and hundreds of years, you use to build fitness for soldiers. It is just carrying weight on your back in a backpack.
And it's interesting because this is, again, kind of a feature that is unique to our species.
Yes. I started thinking about this when I was hunting, because once you kill the animal and you have the meat, you have to pack it out. So if you look at why the human body is built the way it is and what we're physically good at, we're good at two things. The first is running long distances in the heat. So if you've read Born to Run, or that was spawned from a 2004 paper in Nature.
By Dan Lieberman.
Yep, yeah. By Dan Lieberman. And we have all these adaptations that make us good at running long distances slowly in the heat. And we would use that to hunt on hot days.
And it's not even running. I mean, like over 24 hours, we could walk further in a day than an animal could go at whatever pace it chose.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Like we don't have to be running. We can just simply be walking 3 miles in an hour. And
yeah.
We'll walk 75 miles in a day.
We're unbelievable at covering ground. And animals on a hot day, four-legged animals, they're not efficient at cooling themselves. We are. That's one of our adaptations. So we sweat. Our noses are really complex nasal cavities that cool air, all these different things. And so we would chase animals down until they essentially toppled over from heat exhaustion, and we would spear them. And then this leads to the second thing that we're good at, which is we would then have to carry that animal back to camp. And we also have adaptations that make us really good at carrying. And we are, in fact, the only animal that can carry.
Yeah, I was really surprised to learn how lousy primates are at carrying.
They're terrible. Very terrible. So we will still be more efficient. I think we can hold up to 33% of our body weight and still be more efficient at covering ground than most other primates.
With no weight.
With no weight.
Yeah.
Just on their own. They have this sort of tipsy, weird gait. There's a technical term for it. I forget it. But it's not efficient at all. And arguably...
Yeah, which I completely... like. I weigh 180. I could easily carry a 60-pound kettlebell in one hand. It's easier if I could make it a 30 and a 30, but even a 60 in one hand, it's like nothing.
Yeah, most people can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to think that that's more efficient than a primate is with nothing.
With nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it definitely shaped us. And the experience of carrying out meat is really what had me starting to think that, because I had been familiar with the Lieberman work and all that, and it was in my mind, and thinking about how, it's linked, this running's linked to hunting, but then you carry and you're like, oh, they would have had to do this too. Like, we also seem to be the only species that can really do this well. And, arguably we carried a lot more as early humans than we would have run, because running is mostly reserved for hunts, whereas you look at what is gathering. So you go pick up some stuff and carry it around as you get more stuff, and then you carry it back to camp. And so I actually went to Harvard to meet with Lieberman, and that was a really fun meeting. He's a fascinating guy. I enjoyed talking to him. But so I argue in the book that when you look at running is obviously popular. Jogging is a thing, right?
Or is it yogging? I can't remember if the J is silent.
Yogging.
It's yogging, yeah.
But carrying is not, as a form of fitness and activity. And I ultimately ended up traveling to Go Ruck HQ. And this is the tribe, I argue, that has really adopted carrying is the military through rucking. That's like the only group who's really putting this at scale. And Go Ruck is a company that makes backpacks that are specific for rucking, and their founder, whose name is Jason McCarthy, he sort of leaned into rucking as a form of fitness. As I started to really look at the research on it, it's really great for us because you're working your cardiovascular system, but you're also working your strength system to a degree. So you're not going to get that with running or cycling, something that is a pure endurance act. Whereas with rucking, you're getting the endurance, but also you've got load on your body. And so that is stimulating your muscles to a greater degree. And there's some really fascinating studies on backcountry hunters who will carry in loads, into deep into the mountains, and they'll test their body fat before and after. And those hunters across, I think it was a 10-day study. It was a small study. There's only so many weirdos like that. They lost 14% of their body fat, and they actually stayed with the same amount of muscle. Some actually gained like an ounce or two of muscle. So it's really good at melting fat and preserving muscle.
And the other thing I think that's, for me, something I really enjoy about it is, most of my cardio is done on a bike. But as you said, there's no load on a bike. And I used to run a lot growing up. That was sort of my thing. And I feel pretty fortunate that despite 60-mile weeks growing up, I still have perfectly fine knees and hips. But I also realize, as much as I would love to go back to running, I don't want to poke the bear. I dodged a bullet in life being able to run so much without hurting myself. But as I'm older, I just don't think that's the case. And I think when you look at, I think it's about 8 times your body weight is the force experienced by your knees with every step when you run. Obviously, weight matters, and the lighter you are, the better. And it's not a surprise that the best runners are, feather light for obvious reasons. But with walking, it's only about 3 times your weight. So when you're rucking, you're walking, not running. Mm-hmm. And yes, you're adding more weight. So let's say you increase your body weight by a factor of 30%. The 30% increase at a 3x multiple of force is much less than your body weight at 8 times the force if you're running. In other words, as hard as rucking is with all that extra weight, it's still much easier on your knees than running.
Yes.
And you're still getting, yesterday was the first day I'd rucked in 2 weeks because we just got back from vacation. And I'd been walking nonstop while we were there, but it wasn't the same. Holy cow. Like much harder, even just taking 2 weeks off. It's really like a type of workout. My heart rate hit like 165. I was in the 150s and 160s, which is totally uncommon for me when rucking. I'm normally in the 130s, 140s. But I guess because I was sort of deconditioned because all my walking in Europe was, without load.
Yeah.
So it really made a difference. It really showed me just how demanding it is.
It is. And the injury data is really interesting, to your point. When you look at studies on people in the military, what tends to injure soldiers is running. That has, when they'll even throw people into, they'll do studies where they look at injury rates across something like a selection, which is, a long process where these guys are being just hammered. And they're all getting injured by running. That's not to say that some people don't get injured by rucking, but it's like very, very small numbers comparatively. And so for that reason, I think it's a lot safer. But it sort of also gives you, to your point, your ability to get a higher heart rate than you would from walking, and also preserve muscle.
Yeah, the thing that I've got my daughter really embracing is the hills. Because on the uphill, you're just obliterating your heart and lungs. But also, and my daughter might be the only 13-year-old to really be able to explain to you the difference between eccentric and concentric strength. Because all the times we're walking down hills, I'm explaining to her how this is working her eccentric strength in her quads, and this is where you get your brakes from. But I love the walking downhill as well. And, really trying to be as deliberate about it as possible and really making sure, because in life, that's where people fail, mm-hmm. right? So when you get older, never mind running, it's like, can you walk downstairs without collapsing? Can you walk off a step and not hurt yourself? Well, if the answer is, I don't know how to decelerate, the answer is no, you're hosed.
Right.
And there's no better way to learn to decelerate than with a big load on your back walking downhill.
Yes.
That will teach you how to decelerate. And that's not something you get easily in the gym.
No.
It's not something you get easily running. It's you just don't get that skill any other way that I'm aware of.
And if you do fall, you're going to be better off if you've been rucking, because it also is rather good at improving bone density. Really interesting studies on women where it improves bone density better than weightlifting alone, better than cardio alone, and that becomes so important as women age. You look at women in sort of hunter-gatherer societies that are always carrying things. I mean, they stay strong and vital their entire lives, and they just don't get hip fractures.
Yeah, you stated in the book, and we sort of loosely described it here, but I just think, if McDougall argues we're born to run, I would argue we're born to carry.
That is my argument. We are born to carry. If you look at what people in hunter-gatherer societies actually spend their time doing physically, no one runs. Like, you even look at the Tarahumara, they very rarely run, and it's not for fun. It's for ceremonial purposes, but work life is carrying.
Yeah. And a reasonably well-trained person, we can get most of our patients to the point where they can carry their body weight.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, you're not going to start out there if you're not well-trained, but like a reasonably fit person could, for a minute, carry their body weight in their hands.